What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow, so today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 47. This week was episode 10. So, my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and this week we saw the fall of the mighty Gabe. Very sad. We all cried. But he'll be back.
Our king from Baltimore. I mean, I think apparently Alyssa and I are fake fans of the Ravens since
I never claimed
apparently
to be a
last
Ravens
week's
fan.
dance. Yeah, I'm like, we just we grew up there and we don't know this dance. So apparently it was a Ravens dance.
Again, I never claimed to be a fan of the Ravens, so I don't feel bad about this.
We're fake Baltimoreans.
Mm-hmm.
But Gabe gets voted out here in week 10. We start off the episode with Teeny being upset about the vote last week where Saul got voted out. Teeny saying that they're very hurt that Genevieve would leave them out of the vote, make this like sort of personal. I thought their like talk in the evening was sort of interesting because Teeny's like sharing their thoughts, and then Genevieve is like, I've wanted to vote Saul for a while now, but I didn't vote him out because of you, Teeny. So like actually this is my words. Like, oh, actually you should be thanking me because I wanted to do it sooner.
Yeah, I think I perceived it kind of differently. I thought it was really interesting how Genevieve talked about how her emotional relationship with Teeny made her weak and how, like, I should have done this sooner, but I didn't because I care about you. And I think a lot of people have been praising Genevieve for playing like a very good strategic game without being like a fully game bot game, in the sense that like she's still aware of other people's emotions and she's not just like, oh, this is the most strategic like outcome for me. And so I thought it was a really interesting like display of like playing an emotional game versus playing a strategic game. And also that conversation where basically Genevieve was like, you're going to have to learn how to not be emotional because you have to vote me out if you want to win. I thought that was really awesome. I think that's the kind of conversation that I really think Survivor brings out of people. And that's so much more interesting to me than talking about like advantages or whatever. Like the human connections that people have are the interesting part.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I could see it being taken that way as well. To me, it felt like a little bit manipulative. Her intention's probably the way you were saying it, but for me watching, it sort of felt manipulative, like you're blaming Teeny, like actually, like I did this because of you. You should be thanking me because I would have voted him out sooner, but because of our relationship, our friendship, I didn't do this vote out even though I wanted to. It sort of reminded me of when people like apologize to you, but it's sort of the like, I'm sorry that you feel this way. It's not really
Yeah.
like an apology, but it felt like, okay, you're just sort of blaming the other person because of your actions.
I'm not sorry I did it. I'm sorry that you found out, or whatever
Yeah.
the equivalent would be.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I wonder how Teeny took that conversation, whether they thought it was more of the like nicer way that you put it, Alyssa, or more of the manipulative way that I saw it as.
Yeah. And I also think like parts of that conversation might have been cut or, spliced together. I think most of it we did see just rolled straight through, but like there could have been more elaboration to the conversation that made it feel one way or another.
Yeah, definitely probably a way longer conversation than the like 3 minutes we get of it on TV, since they probably had a lot to hash out, considering that they say that they're so close and they have this bond and relationship, and Teeny is just so hurt by this that their friendship has got to go deeper than what we saw on the TV. But it does seem like Teeny is still like annoyed and mad at Genevieve because later in the episode, we see that they would really, really want to write Genevieve's name down, want to avenge Saul. So it does seem like, okay, you can not tell me the plan here and maybe we can apologize and everything, but Genevieve, I, as Teeny, still want to vote you out.
Yeah, I think moving forward, I feel like that will be the most interesting storyline, like how the Teeny Genevieve relationship goes, because I think that It could be like, this is Genevieve like being set up for her downfall. Like Teeny is going to take her out, and it's going to be because Genevieve told her so. And I think that could be a really interesting story. Or it could be the story of how Teeny said, like, oh, I need to be less emotional, but then she still plays with, or they still play with their emotions. And so that ends up being what takes them down. So I think it'll be interesting to see which one of those stories kind of ends up playing out after this conversation.
I agree. It's this episode sort of giving like Teeny Phoenix rising from the ashes. Later in the episode, we see Teeny's bag. It's got a big hole burned into it. So I agree. I feel like the Genevieve Teeny relationship will be very interesting. And maybe it's like what Genevieve was saying. Okay, Teeny, like you're going to have to vote me out. I'll have to try to vote you out. That's just how the game goes. Maybe this is lighting a fire under Teeny to be like, okay, I need to vote Genevieve out. I can't be like just keeping people around because I really like them and we have a very close relationship. But it does seem like their relationship might be fractured permanently. I feel like from Teeny's point of view, if you got like tricked by someone multiple times, like she brought up the Kishan vote and here the Saul vote, if someone is like leaving you out of things on purpose multiple times, I feel like, fool me once, shame on me, but now it's been multiple times. Like I wouldn't trust that person anymore.
Yeah, I don't know, because I feel like part of it could be also like after you're off the island, it could be like, oh, I appreciate that you did this because you cared so much for me, even though we couldn't work together. Like, I still want to be friends with you. So I'd be curious to like see what like the state of their like real life relationship is after the show is over, because it's one of those things where sometimes people do things in the game to preserve a real life relationship, and I wonder if this is like one of those things.
Yeah, if one does vote the other out, I feel like at this point, from our point of view, it's probably like they're fine in real life, but fractured in the game.
Yeah.
But later in the episode, we do get more Teeny being confident, and then they're talking about their identity and then trying to figure things out. So it did feel like a very Teeny-centric episode this week.
Yeah, it did. And I really enjoyed it just because I felt like we haven't gotten a lot of teeny centric episodes. And I love teeny. So there.
Speaking of a teeny-centric episode, I feel like we also got a lot from Andy this episode, a lot of Andy content, confessionals. It seems like we're getting a lot of stuff from his point of view in the past few weeks. Like this week too, we see Andy and Rachel talking, we see Andy and Genevieve talking and working together. We see same with Andy and Kyle, and also with Andy and Sue. So it will be very, very interesting to see how this Andy arc continues, because it's like Alyssa and us talking, we're like, okay, this could go either way, where they are setting up for Andy to win, but it could also be how does the jury perceive him? Seems like Sierra could be very, very mad at Andy for flipping on her and Sam. So it's like, will he have enough agency by the end of the game? Or will people still just think like, oh, that's Andy from day one who had the meltdown. Like, we just brought him along because he's our GOAT.
Yeah, I'm curious because I feel like the editing was maybe trying to make it seem like voting Gabe out was Andy's master plan. So I'm curious if the edit is trying to give Andy more credit than he deserves so that he has like something to like point to, or so that the viewers aren't like left confused if he wins. But I don't know. The whole spider thing kind of confused me. But that's later on. So.
Yeah, we also, when Andy and Sue are talking, we get a whole Sue hates Kyle montage, which I thought was very interesting considering, like, okay, Kyle wasn't even up for elimination this week since he won immunity again. But, like, it was very interesting because, okay, we've seen multiple times now how much Sue dislikes Kyle, and then it just keeps on coming up. So I'm like, okay, will it come to a head next week? Maybe Kyle gets voted out or something's got to happen because they keep on bringing up this seemingly like one-sided dislike.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused by it too, because like you said, it seems like a very one-sided dislike. I don't really get why Sue dislikes Kyle either. Like it just kind of seems to be like Sue holding a vendetta. So I hope
It's
that
the
grudge goes
outward
somewhere.
grudge. Yeah, the outward grudge of Sue like visibly hating Kyle compared to the inward grudge of like people like last week, oh, Genevieve wants to avenge Rome. But here, Sue just really dislikes Kyle. I think like some of the wording stuff, like, okay, Kyle calling them Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and then Sue saying Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Like, okay, yeah, like if someone says that about you, you're obviously not going to like them.
Yeah, obviously.
So hopefully Sue and Kyle can go to war and then Sue can idle him out.
I would rather have Kyle idle Sue out than vice versa, but you know.
Then Kyle will got to find a hidden immunity idol. I want to see Sue or Rachel play their idol.
Yeah, I don't know. Even though I hate Shot in the Dark, I'm kind of disappointed that everybody's Shot in the Dark is no longer in play. I would love to see Rachel play her idol. I keep forgetting Sue has an idol. So, yeah.
So we get to the reward challenge. You have to slither like a worm, moving a ball, and then roll the balls onto target for a sanctuary win. I was surprised it wasn't Applebee's. I feel like the OG version of this with Karishma, they got Applebee's after
Yeah,
slithering.
where's our sponsored content?
Yeah. Like, I was surprised it wasn't Applebee's.
Me too. But I also feel like, regardless of the reward, I felt like it was super obvious from the get go who was going to win the the reward challenge, just because it was so obvious to me that Sam, Kyle, and Rachel were a stacked team. Just like Kyle's really good at the physical part of challenges. I've seen people say that like Sam is really good at the strategic part of challenges, and then Rachel's great at puzzles. It seemed like they were destined to win. I felt bad for the other two teams. So, wah, wah.
I agree. I feel like just looking at it, if you've got two men on the team, you're probably going to do better. You might say, okay, the Gabe and Andy team had two men also, but Andy is like a negative in challenges, like we've seen on like the balance beam and sawing and stuff like that. So I feel like that is like, oh, a detriment in the challenge. But it's interesting. I feel like Andy in these challenges, it's always like low key sexual. Like they did that weird slow mo of his mouth and
His
tongue this
tongue,
time, and like
yeah.
him like humping the ground last week. So I'm like, it's so weird.
What are the editors doing? Do they want us to thirst trap Andy? I have so many questions.
Maybe, especially with the also the slow mo hair flip, taking off the glasses in his transformation.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone's thirsty.
He's got a secret admirer on the editing staff, maybe. But yeah, I feel like Kyle, Rachel, Sam, they were all just very good at the slither portion. Like it's hard to make up time there if you've got like one slow person on the slithering portion. They were so fast that nobody else even got a ball to the ball rolling portion. Gabe was also fast at slithering, but their team was already too far behind.
Yeah, I feel like part of it is Sam got that last ball in so quickly. Like maybe if he had like had to try a couple of
Mm.
times, then someone else would have at least gotten to roll a ball. But yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Sam too, Sam got content here about, oh, he was so happy about the win. He needed this as the pick me up. It was interesting compared to last week when we saw him crying about the loss. So it's very fascinating, I think. Like, okay, do the editors like want us to feel bad for him last week and then feel happy for him this week? Like, seems like they want to try to create an emotional connection between the viewers and Sam. So I think that's very fascinating. Like, okay, why should we feel bad for Sam? Why should we feel happy for Sam here? Is Sam going to go further?
Yeah, I get confused about it too. I feel like part of it is, in general, when I know that the editors are trying to make me feel a certain way, I'm automatically like, no, I don't care. Like, whenever someone gets sob story content, I'm like, okay, they are now my least favorite player. So, part of it is I have a hard time just because I'm generally ornery. So,
It feels like for Sam here that they're trying to give him that underdog. Oh, I was struggling so hard because everyone was leaving me out of votes. I almost got voted out. And now, okay, I'm going to go on the up and up. I feel like the troublesome thing is that there's multiple people that could fit that same category. Like Teeny could also be like, yeah, I'm sort of the underdog now. Rachel, too, almost getting eliminated and now is on the up and up. Even Andy could be like, I have that underdog story. So it's like usually in a season we see, okay, one person is just really bad luck, nothing can go their way. In this season, it seems like a handful of people could have that story going into final tribal council that, okay, it might not count for as much if everyone has the same story.
yeah, like, I feel like with an underdog, you need someone who's been like so clearly far behind and like kicked to the curb. And I feel like everyone who's kind of an underdog also had a point in the game where they were doing okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, okay, who can fit that like underdog role, which I guess in the preview for next week, we see a group of people come together as an alliance called the underdog. So they're seeing it themselves too, just like we as a viewer are seeing a lot of people could fit into that role of someone who is on the outs, but okay, their story going into Final Tribal would be how did you work with what you had and try to fix your problems so you can not be on the bottom anymore.
But then also, a lot of, I feel like, fixing what you had and going from the bottom is partially luck and not necessarily like any skill on anyone's part. Like winning immunity so that you're immune at a key point and giving you leverage can be just as much luck as it is skill. So, I don't know. I think a lot of it is just the story you tell, and whether or not that story is true might not matter.
I agree. Final tribal storytelling, as long as nobody is like calling you out for things, but if things in your story make plausible enough sense, people won't really question it.
Yeah. And as long as there's no one directly contradicting you, because I feel like also, like, if you go to Final Tribal with your closest ally and you're telling something that you put a little bit of a spin on, they might contradict you. So I think who you're sitting next to also matters.
I agree, or even just the perception of the jury of you. So if it's like, okay, someone not respected, they won't be able to embellish or flourish or spin the truth as much as someone who is more respected because people just accept it because they're like, oh, that person's really smart. I respect them and their game so much already. That could be plausible compared to someone who's not respected. You're like, that person's a big liar up there. They are making things up.
Yep. And again, that's all perception. And you can't always
Hmm.
control how other people perceive you. So, like we were saying with Andy earlier, his day one perception might be what ends up shooting him in the foot in the end.
Yeah, it's like, can you overcome that mat meltdown so people can respect you? Or will people like always see you as that person or someone who's just the goat or someone who's not respected?
Mm-hmm.
But Sam tries kiwi for the first time. I feel like we've seen him try pineapple, kiwi. I think he should start a mukbang YouTube channel where he just tries new foods.
Again, I am so worried that he's going to accidentally discover an allergy on the island. Like, Sam tries kiwi for the first time. Sam discovers he's allergic to kiwi for the first time. So,
That'd be pretty
yikes.
good. He's like, is this supposed to feel this way? My throat is closing up.
That would not be pretty good. I would not want a medevac this late in the game.
Nah, they'd Get medical in there. That'd be good for his mukbang YouTube channel. Him trying all the foods. Is he allergic? But be bad for the channel when he's at home. Better to try it on the Survivor where someone will save you.
Yeah. So good for Sam.
But at the sanctuary, Kyle throws out Gabe's name, which I thought was interesting that we see Kyle as the first person here to bring up Gabe's name. Pre-immunity challenge as well. Because I feel like Kyle sort of just gives off the vibe, okay, because I'm continuously winning challenges, we don't really get that much strategic content from Kyle. And since we haven't gotten that much strategic content from him, it sort of gives like, okay, he's just winning challenges and there's not much strategy going on. But Kyle throwing out Gabe's name here, you're like, okay, he's thinking and playing strategically at least a little bit.
Yeah, it could also just be like Gabe is the obvious name, so maybe we're meant to be like, oh, Kyle only sees the obvious plays, whereas some people might be like, oh, Genevieve is the better play here. It's the more obvious, or she's more threatening, even if Gabe might be more obvious in the moment. So I don't know. I think it is good to see Kyle getting a little bit of strategic content, just because I feel like a lot of the reason why Kyle, like voting Kyle out, doesn't end up going through is because people don't really see him as anything more than a challenge threat.
Exactly. So we get to the immunity challenge, and it is the rice negotiation. Jeff says 4 people need to sit out. Really wasn't a negotiation at first because they said, okay, can we do 3? And he says, no, it's a firm 4. I'm like, that's not a negotiation.
Well, they could have pushed back further, like, no, it's 3 or we're all going to play. And I feel like, I don't know. It's hard because with negotiations like this, I'm like, how much of the negotiation was cut? So
that's true. Like, was it 5 minutes of them saying 3 and then Jeff saying no 4? Then I'd be like, that's really not a negotiation. But if they only asked for 3 once, and then, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the magic of the editing strikes again.
But it seems like Jeff wasn't budging from 4 people, and no way 4 people here are going to sit out out of 9 when, like we just said, half the cast is basically having problems and underdogs because they almost got voted out or their best ally just got voted out. You're not getting 4 people to sit out here. So it seems like they probably pushed back more than just what we saw on TV before they switched to the shot in the dark strategy. So then we see Caroline say, okay, can we do 2 shot in the darks? And then Jeff says, no, basically. And then Kyle's like, okay, how about all of them?
Again, I wonder, like, were there any steps in between? Because that feels like a wild escalation to go from 2 to all. Like, Kyle, have you ever negotiated before?
So you're saying maybe they should have went like 2 to 4. Okay, 4 people sit out. How about 4 shot in the darks?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe Kyle screwed them all, shot them all in the foot. But then I
Shot
feel
them
like it'd be
all in the dark.
You're right. But then I feel like if you had to give up 4 shot in the darks, that's a lot harder than saying, okay, 4 people sit out and you only lose your chance of immunity this round.
Mm-hmm. I do
Because then
think
it's
that
like,
he
how?
probably.
Oh, yeah, I guess, yeah. How do you pick which 4 would want to give up their shot in the dark?
Yep. And I think also shot in the dark is a little different from sitting out on a challenge, because with shot in the dark, you only have a 1 in 6 chance of being safe. But if you win immunity, you have a 1 in 1 chance of being safe. So maybe that was Kyle's reasoning. Like, I know that he's not going to let it be equal. So
That's true. So then you jump to all of them. I feel like for giving up your shot in the dark, this is very, very helpful for the people who have more power. So, like Tuku, like Gabe, we see pushing Sam to give up the shot in the dark. I feel like it's less good for the people on the bottom because it's good for the people who are in power, because then you don't need to split the vote anymore. You don't have to worry about someone playing the shot in the dark. You don't need to have a backup plan just in case someone plays the shot in the dark. you have more like easy, straightforward votes without something weird going on because someone's shot in the dark hits. But also, like, the shot in the dark chance of it hitting is so small. And there's only 2 more times that you can even play the shot in the dark. So it's like, okay, giving them up now, and then the chance of it hitting is so small. Like, it's only until Final 7 that you can play it.
Yeah, I feel like also the thing is it might help the people in power more, but the people in power can very quickly become the people not in power. So that might be part of it too.
That's true. I feel like for me, I'm like, great. I'd be happy if there's no more shot in the darks. But yeah, so I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, this is a good thing.
yeah, I agree too.
So we see Sam, he's the only verbal maybe, and then he eventually says, okay, I'll give my shot in the dark up also. Watching it, you're basically like, okay, you can't be the person and the only person to say no to prevent everyone from getting rice. You basically sort of have to say yes here if everyone else is willing to.
Yeah, otherwise you kind of look like a jerk. So hopefully that doesn't come back to bite him.
Yeah, I wish they should do something. It's like, okay, if you played the shot in the dark, this is what would have happened. And then like they would pull out a scroll also. It's like, oh, if I had the shot in the dark, maybe it would have hit. I feel like Jeff would have liked something like that because he's always like, ah, aren't you guys so sad that you don't have the shot in the dark anymore? Aren't you regretting that decision? So it'd be funny if someone played a fake shot in the dark, but you could see like what the fake scroll would be if it were real.
That would have made me roll my eyes, to be quite honest. So I'm glad that didn't happen.
Got 2 more chances for it. They're like, ah, we need to go do this now.
Yep, for sure.
But the immunity challenge, they have to balance balls on wooden discs while you're standing on a balance beam. I feel like this has got to be extra hard with all of that wind going on there. Everyone made it past the first round of 1 ball, and then a handful of people dropped at the 2-ball portion. 3 balls, it was Sam, Kyle, Teeny, and Sue starting off.
Yeah, I feel like the weather matters so much in Survivor, much more than I thought that it ever would. It's been really windy here today in my hometown, and when I was driving, I was like driving and the wind can like push you places. I can't imagine being on a balance beam having the wind pushing you around.
Yeah, the wind would push those balls around a lot. And then it gets down to Sue versus Kyle. Maybe this is another reason why Sue hates Kyle because Kyle keeps winning. And this is like a rematch of the first challenge where Sue lost to Kyle. So maybe that's why she doesn't like him also. And then Kyle wins. And then Jeff keeps on saying, oh, Kyle, you won 4 times. If you win next time, or if you win 5 in general, you're going to be, on the Survivor pedestal of 5-time immunity challenge winners. And I'm like, this doesn't even count.
Again, why do they keep pointing out that Kyle is so good at challenges? It almost feels like Jeff is trying to undermine him.
Yeah, I guess it's like if you were him, you'd be like, Jeff, please stop reminding everyone. Like if I break the record or tie the record, just keep it quiet or say it for the viewers. You don't need to say it for everyone here. But also it's like he technically didn't win one of the challenges, so
Yeah, but again, how as Kyle do you tell Jeff to shut up? Unless you're like Gabe and you're like, respectfully, be quiet.
yeah, Jeff, you're trying to get them to vote me out. Don't tell them I won 4 times. Just like, Teeny and Genevieve won that one. Make it 3.
Yeah,
Could you say that?
I wish.
But Kyle won immunity again. Yeah, too good at challenges. Basically, the vote is between Gabe and Genevieve. Maybe they could have tried to team up here to try to make it not one of them, but it seems like the consensus is okay, either Gabe or Genevieve need to go. Gabe to try to break up Tuku, Genevieve because she has become very threatening after the Saul vote last week. It's what sort of we said last week for Genevieve. Maybe it wasn't such a good move to target Saul that early and to do it in such a visible manner, while also like alienating Teeny and other people by leaving them out of the vote. It seems like that could have been Genevieve's $1 million mistake. I don't think Genevieve will be making it to the end anymore. Pre last week, maybe could have made it there, but I think now she's probably getting voted out next or one after next.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a slip up because Genevieve had been doing a pretty good job of getting her way without everyone knowing that it was her way. But now, like you said, everyone was aware it was her who orchestrated the vote, and she also alienated some of her allies in the process. So,
Yeah, from trying to be under the radar to now, basically, it seems like, okay, this week it was Gabe versus Genevieve of who to go home. If Kyle loses immunity, I think it'd be Kyle versus Genevieve of who to vote out, or maybe you go Kyle just so he can't keep winning. But I think people won't forget about Genevieve, where some people, they are able to, like, okay, like she said, become the tallest blade of grass, stick your head out, and then go back under. Like alligator. But I feel like for Genevieve, it's going to be hard for her to lay low now that she's still just going to be like, okay, if Kyle's not winning, then Genevieve. And then, oh, if someone else is there, then Genevieve. Like, I feel like she's going to constantly be the backup. And then that'll have to be the main plan.
yeah. Like the thing about being the tallest blade of grass is that grass cannot shrink, grass can only grow. So you have to grow everyone else rather than shrinking yourself.
That's true. I like that. I like that. That's good.
I used her metaphor against her.
Yeah. So I guess next week Genevieve will have to be gassing everyone else up. You know, you got to be like, Andy, he's really, really good now. Kyle, really good at challenges. Sue and Caroline, putting more targets in front of you and then trying to shrink back.
Yeah, but I don't know if she's gonna be good at gassing people up. So we'll have to see.
Not like Caroline's good at gassing people up. Caroline's so excited for everyone else. But Gabe gets voted out here. I feel like at this point in the game, it makes sense. Like for everyone else on this island, you need to target Tuku. We said it last week, like, oh, this is about to be very silly on everyone else. If they're going into final 9 with 4 Tuku, next week they'd be going into final 8 with 4 Tuku. Like, you've got to vote one of them out. Otherwise, you're sort of setting yourself up for failure. Even if you think, okay, Sue and Kyle hate each other and they have beef and whatnot, like still having 4 people from that OG tribe, what's to say they don't just put aside their differences, stick together until they have a majority, then it's going to be really hard. But feel like for everyone else, voting out of Tuku here makes sense. I do feel like it was a bad move for Kyle and Caroline to flip this early on Gabe.
Yeah, I don't know because I feel like for Kyle, it was almost certainly a bad move just because when you are as strong as Kyle is, you need another meat shield. But I think for Caroline, it might have been a decent move just because, like she said, Gabe was playing a better game than her. But also, I feel like Caroline isn't threatening enough that she is next on the chopping block the way that like Genevieve or Kyle might be. And so I feel like she can still move forward. And now she doesn't have to worry about like, oh, there's 4 of us, so we're all in danger now. So I feel like for Kyle, definitely not a good move. For Caroline, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with Kyle. Like Kyle, if he loses immunity, he is going to be in some hot water the first next time he loses immunity. Because like last week, he lost immunity, but he had the Tuku protecting him, and at least Gabe is still there. So then, even if Kyle lost immunity, you could try to make it like, okay, 50-50 between me and Gabe. Maybe you want to vote Gabe out, you don't vote me, Kyle out. But now that Gabe is gone, you sort of just voted out your meat shield in a way. And maybe for Kyle, like Sam could be another meat shield. But Kyle definitely, when he loses, is going to be very, very threatening. For me, for Caroline, I think this is a bad move because like we've already seen people say, oh, Caroline, Sue, Gabe seem very close. They see Caroline and Sue as very close. People are like Kyle saying mother daughter, but also the Tweedledee Tweedledum. So maybe people don't see them as smart or strategic. But I feel like being in that close duo, now that you don't have Gabe there, sort of like shielding the Caroline, Sue, Gabe threesome or alliance there. I feel like for Caroline, if people are trying to split the vote to vote Caroline and Sue out, they're going to vote Caroline out over Sue. Compared to if you kept Gabe around maybe until 6, then they would still vote Gabe out over trying to split Caroline and Sue up.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't really thinking about it like the Tweedledee, Tweedledum, the threesome alliance. I was just thinking of them as the Tuku Four. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward, like what everyone's threat level is, because I still feel like for Caroline, at least, she has at least 2 people who would be easy to shove in front of herself.
I agree. I think it probably here goes Genevieve and Kyle as the next 2. And then Sam and Caroline are the next 2 after that. I'm like, I don't really see people want, like, you wouldn't really target Sue. And then you've got Andy and Rachel. And Rachel's done a good job of the blade of grass. She's gotten smaller again, that people don't really have her on the radar. And especially like we saw this week, Rachel wanted to get Genevieve out because Genevieve was saying Rachel's name. If you vote out those people who are targeting you, that's really good. And so Rachel would need to vote out Genevieve. And we saw Caroline maybe targeting Rachel a little bit too. If you vote those people out, then you've got more people on your side. So I could definitely see, yeah, like Kyle, Genevieve next 2, and then Sam and Caroline as a 2 after that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do wonder this week if Sue was left out of the vote or if she just didn't want to write Gabe's name down and that's why she voted for Genevieve, or if she's going to be pissed off next week that Caroline left her out.
Yeah, I think, again, that'll probably be our, like, time at camp little conversation, whether Sue and Caroline are still on the same page or not. I mean, it could just be that the information didn't disseminate quickly enough. And I think because it was like Genevieve, who was also a name in discussion and not something else, it probably isn't going to have that big of a ripple effect unless it was because Caroline left Sue out of the vote.
Maybe Sue will hate Caroline next week too. I also think this is bad for Caroline because I feel like if you're voting out one of your alliance members like this, especially someone who's like big and threatening like Gabe, you would want to get the credit for this. For Caroline here, flipping on your alliance, you don't really get the credit. I think like this is basically like everyone came up with this plan. So it's not really like a you resume thing compared to, I feel like, voting out your alliance member who's the biggest threat in your alliance. You should try to make that a resume booster, but this is not really a resume booster for Caroline.
Yeah, but maybe she can turn it into a resume booster. Again, it's all about spin.
True. She got to use her words. But I'm excited for next week. It shall be a fun, interesting episode. And I can't believe it's almost over. A couple more weeks.
Yeah, we're really hurdling towards the end here.
Yeah, so let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Do you think that voting Gabe out here was the right move, or should they have voted out Genevieve here? Do you think Teeny will forgive Genevieve, or will Teeny want to continue to vote Genevieve out? And do you think someone has a crush on Andy in the editing team? That's why we get so many slow-mo and weird things from Andy in the edit. Let us know in the comments down below. But thank you